Hi, this is Dave Marriott. Welcome to my listening session. Today we're going to listen to the album Melba Liston and Her Bones by the great trombonist and composer-arranger Melba Liston. This is probably an unknown record to a lot of people, but for me, this is one of the great trombone records of all time. Not just for trombone fans, but for people that haven't really ever heard the trombone and its variety and breadth of sound. This record has mutes, it has bright trombone playing, it has mellow trombone playing, it has ballads, it has energetic stuff. It's a really well-rounded album. Every track features 4 trombone players, so you get a really good example of the typical big band trombone section sound. It's a who's who of great trombonists of the 1950s, every single one of them a soloist and leader in their own right. And on top of that, Melba Liston is at the helm. For those of you that may not know who Melba Liston is, she's widely considered the first female trombonist to kind of break into the ranks of the world of the male-dominated world of jazz big bands in the 1930s in LA and later in New York in the 1950s. And this album was recorded right before she would go on tour with Quincy Jones in 1960. So this album paints a really unique picture of a time period. It also represents one of the great female jazz artists of all time. And not just that, but also a super well-rounded musician. Someone who was a great sight reader, someone who was a great section player, someone who was a really formidable soloist, and also a great composer and arranger. There are a lot of those things to aspire to as a young musician. I think this album is also great for young musicians, particularly because it's not just about the solos. This is a little closer to a big band recording and the kind of music that you're probably going to play in school, where there's ensemble sections and solo sections, and the balance is maybe a little more 50-50. I should also mention that this record has been out of print for almost 50 years. Released in 1959, it was probably in print for about a year, and was out of print until 2006 when it came out on CD. Now, I discovered this album on a compilation that came out when I was 15 called Jazz Club Trombone, and it had a couple of the tracks from this record on it. And I just fell in love with the variety and the arrangements and the solo styles, and there's just so much to like. So this first track features 3 trombonists along with Melba Liston. There's 2 bands on the record, and I want to make sure that you know who's playing when, so you'll see on the screen who's playing a solo exactly when, whether it's a trombone player or not. So this first track features 3 trombonists, 2 of them from the Count Basie Band, the great Al Gray and the great Benny Powell, and Benny Green, another trombonist who came up through the big band era, but also was a kind of an early pioneer of the style of bebop with people like Charlie Ventura. So here we're going to hear Melba Liston's composition and arrangement of Blues Melba. Yeah, that's a fun track. Puts you in a really nice, easy mood. It's worth noting, too, that this record was recorded on December 22nd and 24th of 1958. One of the songs on the record dedicated to Christmas Eve itself. But we hear Benny Green there play a little bit of Jingle Bells to start out his solo. There's definitely a Christmas vibe in the air throughout this recording session. See how many little Christmas references you can find as we listen to the rest of this record. Fun little exercise. So the second song on this record is really about the arranging of Melba Liston. Again, Melba started her career in LA playing with people like Dexter Gordon and a long association with big band leader Gerald Wilson. Was discovered by Count Basie and taken out on the road and worked with Billie Holiday, and then had a long stint through most of the 1950s with Dizzy Gillespie. her arranging really came to the forefront as part of the Dizzy Gillespie Band and his State Department tour, where her arrangements were heard all over the world. And this particular arrangement really showcases the fun that the trombone can be. This is the Trolley Song, a song probably made most famous by Judy Garland in the movie Meet Me in St. Louis. This is all about effects and fun and vibe and the trombone having fun in its best kind of ways. There are some short solos, and they're all fabulous. But again, this is really about Melba Liston as an arranger. So here is Melba's arrangement of the Trolley Song. Yeah, so much fun and effectual kind of playing in that. It's bright, it's brassy, it's the trombone in one of its greatest kind of presentations. For the third track, we're gonna switch bands. Again, I said earlier there's two bands on this record. We're now gonna hear the second one for the first time. This one features the great Slide Hampton, who at the time had just left Maynard Ferguson's band and would go on to become one of the preeminent trombonists in the 1960s. It also features Frank Rehack, a fabulous trombonist who spent time with a lot of big bands, but probably was most well known for his time with Gil Evans and Miles Davis. And on top of that, we have Jimmy Cleveland, who, also a journeyman through many big bands, would go on to join Quincy's band with Melba Liston shortly after this recording was made. So Jimmy Cleveland, Frank Rehack, Slide Hampton, and Melba Liston. We also should mention at this point, this session was produced by a gentleman by the name of Leonard Feather, certainly one of the foremost authorities about jazz at the time. He wrote dozens and dozens of books, including the Encyclopedia of Jazz, and this one here, the Book of Jazz, with the foreword by Dizzy Gillespie, no less. He was also a promoter of jazz and produced records and helped artists get known. And he discovered Melba as part of that State Department tour with Dizzy Gillespie and is the reason that we have this record. As a result of that, he's got a couple of song credits on this album. This first song we're going to hear of his is called Pow. It was arranged by Slide Hampton for the gig, but Leonard Feather gets the composition credit, and he will on another song later. The reason I really like that band a little bit more than the other one, there's just so much diversity in the solo styles. You hear Slide Hampton with this kind of buttery, smooth kind of bebop style. You have Frank Rehack, who's playing like very smooth and pretty and singing. You have, this is just a nice, fun tune. Again, we're going to hear all the trombone players get a chance to play. This one's just called Pow. Yeah, there's a reason I really like that band a little bit more than the other one. There's just so much diversity in the solo styles. You hear Slide Hampton with this kind of buttery smooth kind of bebop style. You have Frank Rehak, who's playing like very smooth and pretty and singing. You have Jimmy Cleveland, who's maybe a little bit more percussive. And you've got Melba Liston, who in a lot of ways is like Slide Hampton. It's very bebop vocabulary derived from Dizzy Gillespie. But at the same time, there's like a little more brashness, a little more brightness to the way that she plays. I bring that up because we're going to hear now in this fourth track a beautiful ballad called Wonder Why. It was a tune that was used as a feature in the Dizzy Gillespie band for the male vocalist, so it was a song that Melba was very familiar with. And in this version, she plays the melody. This is the one track on the record that really is all about Melba, and that's it. It's a beautiful melody. She plays the melody beautifully in a very singing way, but still true to her own character. And it's just a beautiful ballad presentation. Ballad trombone playing doesn't get better than this. So here is a wonderful, wonderful rendition of the song Wonder Why, performed here by Melba Liston and her other trombones. That's just great, beautiful ballad trombone playing. You can do no wrong if you model that. The next song on this record is called Christmas Eve, dedicated to the night of the recording session of this song, composed and arranged by Slide Hampton, who also at this point was already a fairly formidable composer and arranger in his own right, had written a lot for Maynard Ferguson's band. And this is just a super fun, blowing kind of tune. It's a rhythm changes based on the chord changes to I Got Rhythm by George Gershwin, a set of chord changes that we jazz musicians use and have used on thousands of melodies. And so it's also great for students to be able to pull a little piece here, a little phrase there. I know the Frank Rehack solo on this particular track is the one that really resonated with me. This is the other of the two tracks that were on that sampler that I got 30 years ago on this sampler when I was 15. And I've been trying to track down the original recording and the rest of the record ever since. So this is the one for me. This is called Christmas Eve, again, composed and arranged by the great Slide Hampton and featuring all of the trombonists. It's also such a great track because you get to hear cup mute solo and bucket mute solo and open solos. Everybody gets their full chorus, so it's not just some little abbreviated statement. You get a nice 32-bar section apiece to get to say something. So enjoy Slide Hampton's Christmas Eve. Again, there's a lot that I really like about that track. Um, the sense of spontaneity, the sense of fun that comes across in the playing. I think you can hear that they're having fun on this particular track. It's loose. It's a set of chord changes. They don't have to read off the page. Everybody's just kind of feeling their vibe at the moment and does a great job of conveying themselves. There's so much uniqueness across those solos, and you can really tell the difference between each of the four of them. As we move forward, we're going to hear Slide Hampton now switch to tuba, something he didn't do very often, but in this stretch of the late 50s and early 60s, he was known to do occasionally. He's going to play the melody of the song at the front and also play an improvised solo about the midway point. The song we're going to hear is kind of a corny little tune. It's the theme song to a TV show called What's My Line from the 50s. It definitely was popular. The show was popular. And we hear Slide Hampton in this version start out playing the melody on tuba in a fairly conservative, if you will, statement. But his arrangement of the tune and the melody and some reharmonizing, meaning he's putting some new chords with the existing melody, make it have its own kind of character, a little more mysterious. But I think, again, the arrangement here is one of the things of note. I think the quality of sound that you get timbrally, the color, if you will, of the section is very different on this record than we've heard. It's warm and colorful in a complex kind of way. The chord qualities are a little more dense, a little more colorful, if you will, and so there's new sounds that we're going to hear on this particular track that we haven't really heard in the other songs on this album so far. So a big credit to Slide Hampton. So again, well, here is Slide Hampton's arrangement of the TV theme song to What's My Line. That's such a fun arrangement, but yet so different from the character of the original. It just creates so much tension, especially with that last chord. Um, Again, I would never have thought I would enjoy jazz tuba, but that track certainly convinced me that I could. And now, as we move into the seventh track on this record, we're going to go back to the bassy guys. This is an original composition and arrangement of Melba Liston's. It's called You Don't Say. Um, it's going to feature two of the trombonists, Benny Green and Melba Liston. They both get a nice big featured moment. We also get some guitar from Kenny Burrell. But I think the thing to really note is this song uses a technique that was employed by a lot of the beboppers. Jimmy Heath told me stories about composing tunes in this same way. The tune is called You Don't Say, and the melody paraphrases that phrase, da da da, you don't say. So we're going to hear that phrase as the core of the melody. But who knows if the title and those lyrics came first, or if the phrase came first and words were put to it to give it some meaning. But it's a common technique for composing, and it creates a great little hook in this composition. Again, this is Melba Liston's composition and arrangement. It's called You Don't Say. of the great compositions of Melba Liston. That one's called You Don't Say. A great solo by both her and Benny Green on that recording. Just a really fun, classic blowing session style track. Now, as we move into the last track on this recording, we're going to close the album with a ballad, which is something I'm kind of a fan of. We just heard something kind of up and bouncy, and now we're going to hear something a little more sentimental. We're going to hear Melba Liston featured on the melody at the very beginning, and then joined by the section in a real traditional trombone section kind of playing. I think the thing that I always point out about this particular track is that we hear kind of a lost skill in the world of trombone playing today, and that's the section vibrato, where we all are creating this sense of singing and vibration in the pitch. And you're going to hear that in the second 8 bars of the melody, where they all just hit the first note, hit the note together, and then just start to shake that slide just a little bit. It's a super special sound, and one you don't hear on the trombone very much anymore, even in modern day big bands. This is also a really unique and melancholy kind of melody. It was co-written by Leonard Feather and Slide Hampton. And again, here we're going to hear Slide Hampton's arrangement. It's called The Dark Before the Dawn. Just a really sentimental, again, melancholy kind of melody. It's very similar to the melody to Horace Silver's Neek as a Dream, which had become famous a few years before, so it borrows from that. But definitely a ballad, and definitely very much about the melody. We get a nice solo from Frank Rehack on trombone in the middle of this. He's the only main trombone soloist. But we do get to hear some beautiful playing from Melba at the first 8 bars, the opening statement of the melody. And again, a lot of times we think of ballad playing on the trombone as being sweet and pretty and maybe not so aggressive. But when we hear her play this melody, there's that characteristic brashness and brassiness and brightness to her sound that I think reminds us, hey, look, I don't have to be small on the trombone to sound singing. I can also be big and be singing as I'm playing the trombone. And she really exemplifies that here. So to close out this very fine album, here is the Slide Hampton and Leonard Feather co-composition with a Slide Hampton arrangement called The Dark Before the Dawn. so we come to the end of the album with that beautiful ballad by Slide Hampton and Leonard Feather. Again, just looking back on this album, there's a lot to take in and a lot of variety, especially when it comes to the trombone. I think most of the time when you get an album by a trombone player, you get a fairly one-dimensional version of what the trombone sounds like, the way they play it. Um, this album, you get 7 completely different, unique approaches to doing the same thing. And I think, again, if I'm a young musician, an album like this is exactly the kind of thing I want to listen to. I want to be able to say, I like the percussiveness of Jimmy Cleveland, but I like the swinginess of Benny Green, but I like the beboppiness of Slide Hampton, but I like the brassiness of Melba Liston. Um, I can be all of those things, and that's what's going to make me me as a trombonist. So, if you take nothing away, take away the amazingness of Melba Liston as a musician, the amount that she was able to pack into this very short album. It's only about 34 minutes worth of music, and this record really was kind of the end of an era for her. As the 1960s moved forward, she was less and less prominent as a player and wrote more and more and more. She spent time writing for musicals and moved to Jamaica and wrote movie soundtracks and did all kinds of different things in music, including a 40-year association with the great pianist Randy Weston. But again, as I mentioned earlier, in the 1980s, she had a stroke and was unable to play after that. So this, in a lot of ways, is the crowning achievement of her career, and certainly, uh, for my money, you get the biggest bang for your buck of Melba Liston in this record. Not to mention all those other amazing names, from Slide Hampton to Frank Rehack to Benny Green to Benny Powell and Al Gray. I mean, it's amazing. So I hope you've enjoyed hearing all these different versions of what the trombone can sound like. Um, if you're not a fan of the trombone before, maybe you are now. If you're a young trombonist, maybe you heard some version of the trombone that you hadn't heard before that you like and feel like you might want to lean towards. I know that's what it was for me, and hopefully it will be for you too. Thanks for listening along with me. Again, my name's Dave Marriott, and have a good rest of your day.